clear of the closing doors, please.
Welcome to Subway Sports Talk. My name is Peter Kennedy, and I am your host. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in to SST on Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, and on YouTube. Joining me for one of the best episodes of the year are my guys, Pat Boyle and Cody O'Connor. And yes, it's baseball season. It's time to preview the Mets and the Yankees for the season that is 2024. Special shout out to our guys, Alec Argento and Andrew Kalanya, who normally, for the past 5 years or so, have joined us for this special occasion of previewing the Mets and Yankees season. We couldn't get the schedules locked in, but don't you worry. We got some Mets fans here. We got an agnostic New York baseball guy here in Patrick Boyle, one of the best around. You probably heard him on The Fan this weekend, and we're ready to roll. We're ready to play some baseball. So, Pat Boyle, what is up, my brother?
Pete, it's opening day, baby. By the time the great listeners of SST are listening to this, it is opening day. Baseball is here, not for the Mets. They'll have to wait another 24 hours. Second year in a row, they get banged. I will be at Citi Field on Friday for opening day. But we got Yanks, Stros. What a way to kick off the season. We made it. We made it, baby. Let's go.
And now, Pat, would agnostic New York baseball guy be a decent way to describe you here? I want to do justice to you.
Yeah, I would say that's right. I'm still faithful to my Cubbies, but, don't get to follow them intensely as – an Oklahoma City Thunder diehard fan. Cody follows his squad. But I'm tapped into the Yanks and the Mets every single day, bro. And, I'm living and dying. Unfortunately, it was a lot of dying last year with both of those teams on every pitch. So hopefully 2024 is a lot better for us here in New York.
Yeah, very fair. And Cody O'Connor, normally when I do these previews here, I'm joined with Alec and Andrew, who are two Yankee fans. I'm the lone Mets fan out here fending for myself. And now I got you here with me, a fellow Mets lover, but also a baseball guy who knows his stuff around New York baseball. Cody, how do you feel talking baseball on the podcast today?
I think I'm just happy to not be talking March Madness after Auburn blew up in flames and all of the advice that we gave last week went for naught. It turns out that watching 0 minutes of college basketball had its disadvantages. So I'm thrilled to be talking baseball. We get another day. We'll go Good Friday for the Mets opening day, but all that means for me is I get to watch the full thing. So best opening team in all of baseball, the New York Mets, are going to start us out on Friday. Get your money ready. Get your wagers up. That's the day to take them, not the other 161. You take them day one, opening day. You'll thank me later.
Big facts. Always got to bet the Mets on opening day. It's a great tradition. I usually like to bet the Mets and Yankees together on opening day. We get stripped of that because of the rain day. But Cody, I will say this, because we prefaced our March Madness selections with how little knowledge we actually had, I did two brackets after that. One, following our brackets, the ones that we kind of, lean towards on the podcast, and then one going kind of against what we talked about. And I got to say, the other one is cooking. So if there's anyone who listened to SST pod and we're like, look at these two schmucks, they're just talking out their ass about March Madness, they don't know nothing, I'm going to fade them, then you're welcome. So I don't think you need to be, embarrassed here, Cody. You should be proud. We probably led some people down the right path.
We told you to fade us. Man in the suit, that's what we did, even when I was betting for myself. Yep, said fade us. And here, real quick, 41 of their last 54 on opening day, the Mets have won. There's your statistic for the night.
That's off the charts, and this is what they do. They win on opening day. We'll have to wait till Friday for that. So since we have to wait for Friday for the Mets to play their first game, why don't we start off with the New York Yankees? And we're going to put this all into perspective. We're going to go through the hitting, the pitching, starters and bullpen, the defense, the big storylines, the up-and-comers and the stars, all the things that are New York Yankees related. We will be talking it. Let me run through some numbers so you guys can keep this in the back of your head as we move through it. The New York Yankees in 2024 have an over-under of 91.5. The division odds, they're actually tied currently with the Baltimore Orioles at plus 185, which is a number that I want to talk more about in a moment. They're minus 240 to make the playoffs, as the Yankees usually are expected to do so every year, and plus 500 to make the to win the World Series. Or is that, that's to win the American League. Apologies. That's to win the American League. And to win the World Series, the Yankees are plus 1,100. That would have been a very crazy favorite if they were plus 500 to win the World Series. All right, so Pat Boyle, I want to start with you here talking about the Yankees as you are tapped in as anybody to the New York market, to the being at the Fan and beyond. With the Soto acquisition, with the addition of Juan Soto to the lineup, does it feel yet like Yankee fans wanted it to? Obviously, with the Cole injury being in play here as well, do you feel that juice that you should have once Soto arrived here in New York?
I'd say yes, but it's complicated, right, Pete? Because this was an offseason where it felt like the Yankees were going all in right away, right? The first couple of weeks of free agency, they make the trade to get Juan Soto. They get Trent Grisham along with that, who, by the way, like nobody's talking about. Like Trent Grisham is a very solid, like fourth outfielder coming off the bench right now. Especially with Jason Dominguez coming back from the torn UCL, probably won't be here until June or July. Hopefully that's the latest. But like you got Trent Grisham in that trade as well, right? So like that's another solid lefty stick. But obviously you get Juan Soto. You have Judge and Soto hitting back to back in this lineup, 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. I think Booney said it's going to be 2 and 3 if I remember correctly. Actually, I forget off the top of my head if they're going to hit 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. Pete, do you remember off the top of your head?
I believe it was 2 and 3 as well. I'll get fact checkers on it.
I'll get fact checkers. Yeah, you're right. Soto in the 2, Judge batting third, and Judge has said for a long time he wants to hit third. So you got those guys back to back. And you've also added Alex Verdugo from the Red Sox, another lefty stick, a guy that has a career batting average in the postseason over 300. Don't let the fact checkers tell you that was only one postseason that he's played in. But, another lefty stick, a guy that can actually play left field, right? We don't have to see Aaron Hicks anymore. We don't have to see Billy McKinney anymore. So you finally get an established left fielder and another lefty bat. Brian Cashman, I guess, finally woke up and had an epiphany after everybody on the Fan screaming over the last several years, get a left-handed bat, please. Please get a left fielder. They do both with one swing there. And they also added Marcus Stroman, who I know you guys as Mets fans aren't too fond of, but, coming off of a season last year where he had a tremendous first half. The guy was an all-star 2 years ago. So this, for all the additions the Yankees made, and they made a lot of those early, it was, okay, now go get Blake Snell, go get Jordan Montgomery, get us one more arm to finish off a great offseason, and it never came. It never happened, even down to these last couple of weeks where the price on Snell came all the way down. The Giants got him. The Yankees, that initial offer, $165 million. Biggest loser this offseason, Scott Boras, that fat, greedy pig, right? I mean, look at the L's he took with all his big clients at the end of this free agency. But that being said, and then Jordan Montgomery goes 1 year, $25 million to the Diamondbacks. So it felt like the Yankees, the first month of the offseason was fantastic. You get Soto, you get all these additions, and then the last 2 months was you kind of got teased. All right, you thought there was going to be one more big move. The Yankees lose out on the trade to Corbin Burns as well when you knew that they were involved in those negotiations. They didn't want to give up Spencer Jones. We can talk a little bit about him in a little bit, but I think overall it was a solid offseason. But then again, it's classic Yankees, right? Just when you think things are going well and you think maybe this team is done with the injury bug, Garrett Cole shut down until at least May, and I'm going to be honest, don't be surprised if we're at if we hit July and it's all right, Garrett Cole is going to come back after the All-Star break here, or if we hit June and it's Garrett Cole return pushed back until after the All-Star break. So that's a huge, huge hit to what was a great offseason. And then also Judge, the abdominal discomfort. Talking about, he hopes to be ready for opening day. And now DJ LeMahieu, fouls the ball off his foot and he can't stay healthy. And you thought, all right, if DJ's healthy, he's a bounce back. He's the spark at the top of this lineup again. And you're thinking maybe we get 2019 DJ LeMahieu back. So for all the great things that happened in November and December and January for the Yankees, it kind of just got then kicked back. He got knocked back down a peg. So overall, I think there is a lot of buzz, right? I mean, you have Soto. That kind of trumps everything else, but the Garrett Cole injury is huge, and I think Yankee fans have an all too familiar feeling going into this season where it's, if everybody stays healthy, this team can make a run to the World Series. But I don't think any Yankee fans are confident that the team will stay healthy.
Yeah, that's definitely the continued narrative here in New York, and it's really a shame because when Soto got traded to New York, and all of a sudden now it's the beginning of spring training, he's taking ABs, he's facing Nestor Cortez, he's striking out, right, and then all of a sudden he's hitting home runs in spring training, all things are good again, right, and it's like, oh my gosh, the New York Yankees have a superstar. You can't even make any ends, ifs, or buts about it. Juan Soto is in New York playing baseball for the Yankees. It's exciting. As a Mets fan, it's exciting. He looks cool in the uniform. And that's not that easy to do, to look cool in the Yankees uniform. The Yankees uniform lives above most of its players, but Soto looked awesome. It was exciting. And then the Cole news comes and it changes the energy entirely. A lot of these odds I read to you before, 91.5 on the over under, like that's down just based off one player, the Cy Young, one of your best signings in a long time. That pitcher, Garrett Cole being out, changes the atmosphere entirely around this club, as the pitching, starting pitching specifically, was one of the question marks going into this season. So what we're going to do now, we're going to reset a little bit as Patty just kind of laid out the stage of how this offseason went and what we're looking for moving into the season. I want to break it down specifically here with you guys, Pat and Cody. I want to talk about the offense, then the pitching, and kind of go back into our predictions from there. So, Cody, I'll start with you. With the hitting, it's so obvious, and we talked about Soto already, that having Soto and Judge almost by no matter what metric you check, the Yankees now have two of what? The 5 best hitters in the league, right? Give or take. You could say the 2 best. You could say 2 or 3 best, whatever it is. However, it's not just a 2-man lineup. We still got 9 guys going out every single day. You know the Yankees will be changing the lineup as much as anybody in the entire league. So, Cody, this offense outside of Judge has been a huge problem, a huge question mark over the past 2 seasons. Without him, they have been nothing. Is Soto enough to lift this offense up, or have the other pieces in this lineup got healthy enough or better enough to make this a real offensive juggernaut again?
Well, I'll break news here. The Yankees got a lot better when they added Juan Soto. I'm going to call me crazy if you will, but they got a lot better when you add Juan Soto. What that does to that lineup, the protection that he's going to get with Aaron Judge behind him. I mean, the pitches that guy's going to have to see because of, like I said, Judge right there, that changes and lengthens this lineup completely. To me, where they can really hit their stride is if you get at least one of, and I think there's a real chance you get both, but if you can get one of Anthony Rizzo or Giancarlo Stanton to have near their top type of year, if you get something close to that, I'm not saying Giancarlo Stanton's going to hit 60 home runs or the 59 that he put up, but if he can hit 30 to 35 and stay healthy, all of a sudden that 2 through 4 in your lineup is an absolute nightmare for pitching to go through. And you have to pick somebody to throw to, right? You have to pick a spot. So because of Soto and Judge, those guys are all going to keep seeing more and more pitches. I've always really loved Rizzo as a player. Patty, I know he's your boy from the Cubs. I've always thought he's a good hitter, got really good bat-to-ball skills. He was obviously not healthy last year. They had that whole fiasco with the concussions and it not being reported. And then months later, you find out that, he's been playing and dealing with this. So, I mean, somewhat similar to maybe Starling Marte. Like, if you just have a healthy Anthony Rizzo and he's hitting and clicking on all cylinders, anything from Giancarlo Stanton's going to be a plus. What you get from Glaber is going to be a plus. You assume Anthony Volpe's going to step up. So I do think they have the lineup. The pitching is and absolutely should be the question going in, the starters. And like you mentioned, Garrett Cole going down changes the entire trajectory of what you think this season's going to be, at least early on. You hope that he's going to continue to progress, and hopefully he's back, June, July. I think Yankees fans would call that a win if you find out the guy's back in June and you got him the rest of the year and you piece it together until then.
Now, excuse me. So with that being said, and Pat, I'll jump back to you here. Is there one person you do expect to take up that mantle as the other person? Like we always talk about with basketball, right? Who's going to be the other guy that comes up to the plate? Like we know Brunson and Randall, when Randall's healthy, are going to score these points. Who's the third guy, right? So Cody mentioned Rizzo. He mentioned Stanton. Obviously, Torres was probably the most consistent out of the bunch last year. Is there one guy you're looking at in this lineup who you say, if this guy has a bad year, it's out?
if one guy has a bad year, it's out. Well, I mean, obviously, I don't know if it's bad year. I just think it depends how long Garrett Cole ends up being out, right? I mean, again, I think
I'm
Yankee
talking
fans.
offensively.
Oh, offensively, just offensively, if another guy has a bad year besides Soto or Judge,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, not to just duplicate the answer with Rizzo, I would say if Anthony Volpe takes a step back after the promising rookie season he had last year, that kind of is you know, that's a bat that you think maybe at worst he produces what he did last year. Although the batting average wasn't high, it was what 230. I mean, he did have 19 home runs. Or 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. So he's a 20-20 guy. You're thinking at the bare minimum he does that again. And I know he's kind of refined his swing here over the offseason, but if Volpe gets hurt, and again, you could say about that at any guy for the Yankees, it's kind of really tough to do a Yankees, 2024 preview without saying if this guy stays healthy, if this guy gets hurt with just about everybody, because it happens every year. But I think if Volpe stays healthy and he just, for whatever reason, can't hit breaking balls again, or after a Gold Glove season last year, maybe he makes a couple errors early in the season at shortstop. If Volpe doesn't take a step up, and if he regresses, I think that could be a big hit to this lineup at the bottom of the order. Where again, last year, how many times were you looking at 6 through 9 in the Yankees lineup, and you're like, dude, these are automatic outs every single time through the lineup. If Volpe isn't a guy that can help flip that lineup, and I know he might hit 7th this year, but, even if he's not setting up the bottom of the order, if he's not flipping the order back to the top here, if he can't do that, and, you got your big guys coming up, if it's Glaber in the leadoff spot, Soto and Judge, and they're coming up with nobody on base, they're not having a chance to drive guys in. That makes it easier to maybe pitch around Soto and pitch to Judge if there's only one guy on base, or it makes it easier to pitch to Soto if there's only a guy on base rather than first and second. So I'm going to go ahead and say Volpe. A guy that, like I said, you got 20 and 20 out of last year, and you got Gold Glove caliber defense. If he takes a step back, that's when you look at the Yankees in totality. That's a huge chink in their armor if he regresses. So I'm gonna go with Volpe.
I like that pull a lot because I think he's been flying under the radar in a nice manner for himself this year, coming into 2024. With Soto coming into the fold here, being that big star, taking some of the attention, there was so much energy on Anthony Volpe and his success last year, or lack thereof, right? So when he did stuff great, it was great. When he was struggling, people were giving him a hard time. I think he might, and obviously, listen, it's New York. He's going to get crap when he plays bad, almost no matter what. But with this added bonus of Soto in the lineup right now, and assuming he'll be consistently good, that might help Volpe as well, not being as relied upon. Not that he was relied upon that heavily last year, but you would think going into year 2, it's like, oh my gosh, if Volpe doesn't take this big step forward, we're going to struggle. Now he gets to take a little bit of a small step forward and continue to help this team in the ways that he can. I actually feel like that's going to bode well for him. I can see him having a real kind of like spring forward type of year where all of a sudden we're like, oh, this is the guy who we were expecting to be the future of this position for the New York Yankees. So I like that pull, Patty. I don't think like he's going to be the main reason they stink if he's not having a good year, but if he does have a good year, he could be absolutely huge for them. As far as anybody else on this offensive side of the ball here, anything else jump out for you guys as far as like some of the young people, some of the more marginal pieces here? Does Verdugo mean anything to you guys? Oswaldo Cabrera, would you expect anything from him? What's going on with the rest of these people on the Yankees here? Because as we know with the Yankees, everybody plays a lot. They don't run out the same lineup. I heard a stat about them last year. They only played the same exact lineup. Sorry, let me rephrase this. They only used the same lineup. Hold, this is a very complicated. Here it is. 6 different lineups. There we go. 6 different lineups did they use more than once. That's it. Only 6 lineups did they use more than once, and it was like 2 times each. It was like a ridiculous stat. That was a very confusing way to say it, so I apologize for it out there. But basically the point is the Yankees use a different lineup every freaking single day is the fact of the matter here. So all these depth pieces are going to have to play. So when it comes down to the Verdugos, the Oswaldo Cabreras, the Trent Grishams who got brought up before, John Birdie who just got brought over, any of these guys stand out to become a Yankee favorite, Cody?
Well, as a Met favorite, John Birdie getting out of the NL East is mine. That's my favorite guy that got over there. That was huge news, as we talked about it before the podcast. I would say my most likely candidate is probably Alex Verdugo, a guy that, has a proven track record, has done it before. And you're going to need, I mean, you mentioned it before, but it is those others. It is those guys when Soto or Judge or Rizzo or Stanton or Glaber for that matter, when those guys aren't going, like, who can produce at the bottom of the lineup? Who can squeeze out runs? Or like Pat said, just turn the lineup over and give your guys a chance. Like, sometimes from that 6 through 9 spot, it's not going to be special, kind of similar to the 4 or 5 guys in your starting rotation. You just need them to be formidable. You need a spark. You need a big play every now and again, a big hit, a big swing. And that's the type of things that, good teams are able to do, is get production out of those bottom spots. So to me, it's likely by committee. You're not going to typically have the same guy each night, but if you could get a huge plus from a Verdugo, all of a sudden this lineup is really, really lengthy and it's really tough to pitch to.
Yeah, and Pete, if I may just chip in here, going off of what you said before, where I think if Volpe regresses, it's a huge hit to this lineup. And you said, you kind of took that one step further and said, well, if he has a, even better sophomore season than his rookie season, it could be a huge boost to this lineup. I think the guy that I think if he has a huge season, it's a gigantic boost to this lineup. It's Gleyber Torres. I mean, Gleyber Torres is finally in his walk year. He's finally in his contract year after 6-7 years of pre-arbitration and arbitration. The contract extension. Are the Yankees going to trade him? Should they have traded him? Is Gleyber, are they not going to re-sign him after this year, especially if they re-sign Soto? And, you got to start paying all these other guys here. Is there any room for Gleyber Torres to get a contract? Well, whether it's with the Yankees or not at the end of this offseason, he's second, third priority until after the Yankees re-sign Juan Soto or they don't re-sign Juan Soto. I think if Gleyber Torres has a year that lives up to the last 2-3 years he's had, I think he can be a Yankee if they miss on Juan Soto. But you get Gleyber finally in a contract year. So would it surprise? It wouldn't surprise me if Gleyber Torres hits 275 this year with 35 home runs and 100 RBI. It really wouldn't. And again, you're looking for somebody to pick up the slack. If DJ LeMahieu can't stay healthy all year and he's just a shell of himself like he was last year, if Rizzo maybe doesn't have that bounce back year that you're hoping for after he basically played 3 months with a concussion last year and brain fog, Glaber's in a contract year, bro. It would not shock me. And I'm a big fan of Gleyber because I think he kind of gets pushed down and he kind of is now on the Yankee whipping boy pole, with Giancarlo Stanton. I'm at a loss for words right now with Gleyber because I'm just kind of looking at what he's done. And even last year, I'm, off the top of my head, I'm like, well, what did Gleyber do? I know he had a solid year. He hit 273, dude, with 25 home runs and 68 RBIs, and he had an OPS of 800. Like, those are decent numbers. Now, are they numbers warranting like a 7-year, $180 million contract? No. But again, it's a walk year for Gleyber. This is the first chance for him to really prove himself and stick it to whatever haters he has out there, whatever doubters he has out there. A guy that has only missed like 20 combined games over the last 2 years. And since he moved to second base, we haven't heard about his defense being a problem. Everybody, anytime Gleyber once every month or so has like a head-scratching play, it's, he can't be a winning player. He'll never, he'll always be this nonchalant guy that kind of reminds us of Robinson Cano. And, 99 out of 100 times when Robbie Cano would make a slick play, underarm throw, you don't say nothing. But the one time he makes an error, it's, this guy doesn't care. He's so nonchalant. That's what I feel like, gets pinned on Gleyber unfairly a lot. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my name on it. I think Gleyber has a monster year here as a guy that is kind of not unexpected because he's done it before, but out of the guys outside of Soto and Judge, I think he steps up the most, has a huge year. And I think ultimately if the Yankees do re-sign Juan Soto, Gleyber gets a bag from elsewhere.
He was like, their second best hitter last year? Like not even close? He was their only
because
above
he played
average
almost every single game and he was consistent.
Yeah, and this is a conversation we're going to have when we get to the Mets. And I like to do, in the middle, we'll do a little bit of a comparison as we transfer from the Yankees to the Mets. Last year, it was so top-heavy, and it still might be a little bit more top-heavy with Soto and Judge, right? Like, if you look at, like, the top 50 or top 100 hitters in the league. You see Soto and Judge at number 2 and number 3, and then the next Yankees like pretty far down that list. Whereas like the Mets, for example, they don't have a top 10 guy, but they might have a guy at 20, 30, and 45 or something like that with Alonso, Lindor, and Nimmo. And that little dynamic change is different. Can Glaber be that guy who bridges from the superstars to the rest? Last year he was, but there wasn't anything else. If he can be that guy again this year, it's going to go even further. Because if you look at the stats from last year, it's like horrible. All the OPS pluses across the entire lineup for the Yankees, all at 100 or less, except for Judge, which is obviously big, and Glaber, who was above 100 in his own right. So he has to be big. He's important for them. So let's move on to the pitching, unless there's any other notes here from you guys on the offensive side. Or actually, let me just ask this question quickly. On the defensive side here, Pat, how much do you think that comes into play here? Big talking point with the Yankees is who's playing center field. Can Judge or should Judge play that frequently in center? It looks like he's going to be playing a lot of center field this year. Obviously, Grisham comes into play there as well. Is that something that you put a lot of stock into, Pat? I know it's a big talking point on the fan if Judge should be playing that much center field or not.
I don't think he should. Again, with a guy that you're paying all this money to now, and deservedly so, but we have, Judge he's injury prone. Like, you can't run from that anymore, dude. And again, mid-spring beat up is the fucking quote we get from Aaron Boone on March 15th. Aaron Judge is mid-spring beat up, dude. Nobody wants to hear that. So abdominal discomfort isn't an oblique. He's hoping to be in the opening day lineup. It seems like we have quelled those concerns for now, but the first time Judge makes a diving catch out in center field, or the first time he has a slight grimace at any point at the plate or in the field, it's going to be here we go again. So I would try to limit the chances that he can get hurt as much as possible playing out in the vast center field at Yankee Stadium. I want him in right field, and I want him DHing any chance he gets. And I know that's kind of tough to do when you have Giancarlo Stanton on your team, but, anytime they throw him out in right field or left field, like, he's not bad. So I would give Stanton as many chances in the field as possible, and I think he hits better when he plays in the field. The point is, I don't want Aaron Judge playing center field any more than he has to. It also makes it a big talking point of when Jason Dominguez is nearing his return. Do you rush him to come back so he can play center field, and then that takes the pressure off of Judge having to play there every day? But, first 50 games of the year, don't be surprised Judge is in center field for 40 of them.
And it sucks because he's good at it, right? Like, it would be easier if he wasn't good at center field, but he's actually good at the position, but that puts him in harm's way. Cody, you have anything to add on that front?
No, it's just, like you said, at what cost? If you have to do it, that's one, that's the thing. But if you can avoid it and just keep Judge as healthy as possible and off his feet as much as you can, he's got the injury history year in and year out, and he's your one of at least two, if you want to make the argument, but he's your most valuable player. So you have to keep him healthy at all costs.
All right, on to the pitching front here for the New York Yankees. We talked about Garrett Cole. His timeline to return is not exactly clear, so the starting rotation looks as follows. Nestor Cortez, Carlos Rodon, Marcus Stroman, Clark Schmidt, and Lucas Heel. We went over that before. My bad. So that's the rotation right now, and obviously the bullpen, as you pretty much can always trust with the Yankees, they put together a damn good bullpen, and it looks like they can do more of that this year. Maybe some more question marks than normal, but still quite the pen and never a huge worry. Got the Clay Holmes, the Loizakas, Luke Weaver joins the pen, Clayton Beater. You got some names out there for the Yankees pen. So let's start off with the rotation here. Garrett Cole aside, because we know he'll be out for a little while here. Any big-time bounce backs from the guys who need it most in Nestor or Rodon? Pat, I'll start with you.
You better fucking hope Carlos Rodon has a bounce back year this year, man, or he's going to hear it. He is going to hear it early and often, the boos raining down upon him if he can't figure it out this year. He looked like a fat milkman from the 1970s for most of last year. Pitch him, it's one thing, you got the jersey open looking like the closest thing to Luke Voigt, and you look like a slob and you got the milkman mustache. Like, if you're pitching great, then fine. You become a character. You take on this folklore hero kind of thing. When you got a 6 ERA and you can't even get out of the third inning and you're hurt and we got to hear about your back all year, like, bro, nobody wants to hear that. So the Yankees gave him $165 million. He better figure it out this year. He better be a guy that steps up in Garrett Cole's absence here in the first 2 months. Because as much as I like Nestor Cortez, I don't I really don't think you're ever going to have an all-star season again at a Nestor. Will you have a year as bad as last year? I think he's kind of somewhere in between. A guy that's on most rotations, a 3 or a 4. He's getting the ball opening day. You're going to hope that his body can hold up here. So Rodon, absolutely Rodon, whatever you'd like to call him, just fucking get outs, get outs, Don. That's what his name better be here this season. He absolutely is the biggest X factor in this Yankees pitching staff this season. If he pitches well, I can see an avenue where the Yankees win 95 games. If he sucks like he did last year or can't stay healthy, I can see an avenue where the Yankees don't make the playoffs. Because let's be honest, without Garrett Cole last year, the rotation was very average. It was very average. It was decent, and they had one of the best pitching staff starting rotation ERAs. Most of that was because of Garrett Cole. So Carlos Rodon absolutely better step up this year. Marcus Stroman, not as big of a pressure and expectations on him, but again, hopefully you're not hearing about his social media posts and blocking people in June or July. Hopefully you're hearing about him staying healthy and giving you 5 2/3, 6 1/3 innings every single time he steps on the mound. I think he will. I think Stroman has a solid year, and he's got the motivation on his side too. His vesting option for 2026, not next year, for 2026, kicks in. He gets another $18 million in 2026 if he pitches 140 innings this year. So Stroman, he's motivated by people that hate him and people that doubt him. He's also motivated by money. I think that's become pretty clear with him. So I think he will stay healthy and give you length. But again, it comes down to Rodon for me, head and shoulders above anybody else in this rotation, not named Garrett Cole.
I don't know if you wanted to jump in right in there, Cody, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, let me hop right in because, we obviously got to see a couple years of Stroman, and there's so much conflicting reports and stances on who he is and what he is as a pitcher. But if you take out the outside stuff, which he brings upon himself so often, as a pitcher, as a fan, he's a competitor and a bulldog. I mean, he's the type of guy that gives your team energy on days that you just don't have at a 1:00 game on Thursday afternoon. Stroman's out there pumping his chest because he's through. He is the type of guy that has that extra gear that you'd love to see as a fan, but then he has that other side of him, and he left the Mets fans with a sour taste in his mouth because of it. So it's a big if, but if he is just strictly baseball, I got to get a payday, I'm working my ass off, I'm going to be the best version of myself I can be, you can have a really solid number 3. When I look at this Yankees rotation, I look at it very similarly to the Mets. I think you guys really could have benefited from adding, you said it, but Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, one of these guys to just lengthen that rotation, to take a guy in Stroman from being a 3 and an iffy one at that to being a stud number 4. And if you can do that with those guys, all of a sudden your outlook's way different. Garrett Cole goes down and it doesn't quite feel so detrimental to you. So them not adding that, definitely, I'd be upset as a Yankees fan. I'm upset the Mets didn't add Montgomery as a Mets fan. I think they absolutely should have done that, and my expectations would have changed. So I think the Yankees should have done the exact same thing.
I just wanted one other thing I wanted to add in about Stroman. Big ground ball, sinker baller pitcher. We'll see how that plays at Yankee Stadium, right? Short porch and right field. I think there's going to be days where Stroman is lights out and the sinker is untouchable, and he's racking up. He's getting through 7 1/3 on 83 pitches, and he's only got one walk or 2 walks, and there could be other days where he gets bounced after 3 1/3 because the sinker ball ain't sinking, and he gives up 4 home runs. But that's his biggest pitch for him. Almost every time he takes the mound, and especially with a short right field porch at Yankee Stadium, it makes that pitch for him even that much more important. And, the injury problems he had the second half of last year were a big reason why that he struggled the last 2 months in a Cubs uniform because, he was pitching under duress and his sinker didn't have that good run, that good drop to it. So he stays healthy. And again, like I said, that's like you have to throw that in there as a precursor to every player on the Yankees team every single year. But Stroman stays healthy. Yeah. That sinker is filthy. It's ridiculous. And he's going to get a lot of ground balls. And I think he could be a guy that gives you 6 2/3, 7 innings a lot of days.
Can I just say real quick, Rodon has been known, if I'm not mistaken, to have kind of bounce back years after these bad ones. So he was about as bad as he could have been when he got to Yankee Stadium last year. There is a realistic chance that he returns to form and can throw closer to a 3 ERA than a 5 like he was. So if you get that, all of a sudden you got a 1-2 punch with Garrett Cole coming back. That's your chance. That's your hope if you're a Yankees fan. I think it really lies on Rodon.
And I think the big thing for Stroman specifically, too, is to be that guy until at least Cole gets back. Now there's a couple year sample size of Stroman being very, very good to start seasons all the way through the All-Star break. He did it with the Mets. He did it with the Cubs. If he can do that again and be a really reliable starter until Cole gets back, that'll go really far for him. And obviously, the more you get from him, the better. But he needs to, at minimum, hold the ship tight until Garrett Cole gets back. All right. Any other notes on the Yankees pitching staff here? I know, I kind of throw away talking about the Yankees bullpen. I mean, frankly, listen, the Yankees bullpen has been lights out for years. They just put together a good bullpen. It's what they do. They got some of the familiar names here. They got guys who are good players, great ERAs. Look at the stats. They're all good, right? What are we even talking about here? Do we have to make any notes here? Any notes here on the Yankees bullpen? There's probably not as many names as we're familiar with, but I just kind of chalk them up to have a good pen no matter what every year.
Well, I will say this. I mean, again, with Loaisaga, only played 17 games, only pitched in 17 games last year, coming off a big injury. So I think the Yankees bullpen, if Clay Holmes gets off to a rocky start again, like he did last year, he kind of, he middled out for most of last year, ended up having a pretty decent season. He had a couple outings. He went through a couple stretches where it was like, dude, I don't even know if we could toss him out on the mound right now. And the sinker, that boulder sinker that that he throws, sometimes he had no control over it. I think if he has those problems this year, now you can go to Loaisaga and say, all right, Johnny Lasagna is our closer now for this stretch. Tommy Kahnle, a guy that also has been banged up a little bit for the last year and a half. I think he had Tommy John, if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of last year or at the end of 2022 after he came over from the Dodgers. So you got guys that can get outs in bunches. Ian Hamilton, another one that kind of came on out of nowhere. And then you've still got, you got two other guys that you wish you had that are on the 60-day IL right now. Scotty Efros, who they got from the Cubs, and Lou Trevino, who they got from the A's. So, undoubtedly there's going to be guys that go down. You hope it's not Holmes or Loaisaga. But then knowing that in 2 months from now or so, you're going to get Efros and Trevino back are big. And just one other thing for me in the starting rotation, a guy that you mentioned before briefly, Pete, Luis Gil, had a phenomenal spring training, and he beat out Will Warren for that 5th spot in the rotation. I know we kind of saw him and the Randy Vasquez's and the Joni Britos of the world over the last few seasons, and you didn't see Luis Gil at all last year. He, I believe, had Tommy John, right elbow surgery, March of 2023. So he's coming back off of an injury, and his stuff has looked ridiculous so far in spring training. So, there's always that kind of guy that breaks through, whether it's in the bullpen or the rotation. If nothing else, where you might have a down year from Nestor, or might have a down year from Clark Schmidt, who's also looked pretty good. I'm going to say Luis Gil is going to be the breakout guy of the Yankees rotation this year, and a guy that you can say with confidence he's in our starting 5 for the next several years.
So there it is. Let's talk about the predictions here for the Yankees in 2024. Let's start off with the simple over-under. 91.5 right now. The juice is a little bit towards the over. Plus 100 on the over. 91.5. Obviously, that number changed a little bit with the Garrett Cole news over the past couple weeks. So, Cody, let's start with you. Over-under for the Yankees, 91.5.
I'm going to go under 91.5. I think they'll be close to the number, probably somewhere around 88 wins. Big part of that has to do with the Garrett Cole injury and, of course, the uncertainty that comes with that. So that's just a lot. That's my gambling standpoint almost, more than trying to be a fan or just analyzing baseball. Those question marks really throw a wrench into things when it comes to over-under totals. And then the other one is that and granted, you're not playing the same amount of games against your division, but that division is pretty damn good yet again. You got Baltimore, who I think is the favorite in the division. Toronto is going to be another 85-plus win team. Boston can always hit and is always going to give the Yankees fits. And speaking of which, so is Tampa Bay. So because of the teams that they're going to see as well, the Yankees, I always say you could pencil them in for 95. I wouldn't be surprised. It's not something I would take, but over under, I'll lean slightly under 91.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well. I think if you had to pin me to a number, I'd say 88. I think the Yankees are a wild card team. I can't have a ton of confidence right now in this pitching rotation because of Cole. And like I said, I know that it's maybe, you're hoping to get him back mid-May. I'm telling you, you're going to get that notification in second, Memorial Day weekend after you hear Garrett Cole's return pushed back by 2 weeks or whatever, and you're going to get Booney. You're going to get Aaron Boone with all his Boonisms and his bullshit. Coley's getting close, and he's just fucking lying straight out to your face, and then you're going to get Garrett Cole sidelined until after the All-Star break. I'm telling you, like, if there's one thing that I would make a bet, what are the odds on Garrett Cole pitches before the All-Star break? I would take after that. If it's plus odds, I would put my next month's rent on it. So I just don't have a ton of confidence in this starting rotation to maintain outside of him. Whether it's between Nestor Cortez and Carlos Rodon, one of those guys will probably pitch really well. The other probably won't pitch well at all, or will get hurt. And I think Stroman's going to have a decent year, but I'm not expecting a whole lot out of Clark Schmidt if he has to pitch every 5 days. I think Luis Heel breaks through, but overall, I just think there's going to be too much variance in this starting rotation. And then the lineup, again, it's DJ. I think DJ LeMahieu's a shell of himself at this point. Anthony Volpe, again, if he regresses at all, like, that's a major flag. And then again, it's can Judge stay healthy? There's just too many question marks for me to predict, to have the optimism that everything is going to go right, or that more things will go right than wrong. And ultimately, I do think the Yankees roster is talented enough to get a wild card spot. But like Cody said, the Orioles are probably a 100-win. They're a 100-win team on paper again. I mean, they got dudes coming out of the bullpen that they're 99. The rotation is solid. They added Corbin Burns. That lineup is freaking stacked. The Rays are the Rays. As mediocre as they look on paper, they find a way to win 85 to 90 games or even more every single year. And the Blue Jays, I know that's, it's for the last 2 years. Look out for the Blue Jays. They're the biggest threat in the AL East, and they haven't put it together yet. You got 4 teams in the division that can all win 85 games or more. And like Cody said, the Red Sox are supposed to be terrible. Would it surprise anybody if this is the year of the Red Sox? Somehow they get a bunch of guys that you don't know right now going into opening day that are stars for them, that are studs for them, like you saw with the Texas Rangers last year with their bevy of rookies and young talent. So it's too much pressure, too much expectations for me, for a team that I don't necessarily have a lot of confidence that things will break right for them. I'm going under. I would be surprised if they don't make the playoffs again.
And the playoffs are minus 240 for them. Division winner plus 185. And Cody, you mentioned the Orioles being the favorite. According to DraftKings, they're equal, which seems a little bit crazy to me, but that's kind of what you get when you're trying to bet on Yankees futures, right? It's similar to the Cowboys. Their numbers are always going to be juiced a little bit towards the public betting on them, a little bit more than your average fan, right? So are they the actual favorite to win the division? Are they actually tied with the Orioles as far as their odds to win it? Probably not. But when you're betting it, you're never going to get that value just because they are the Yankees. So I'm with you guys. I think the number's probably a little bit juiced up, right? Just because of who the Yankees are and how people bet on the New York Yankees. 92 wins doesn't seem like a lot in Yankee world right now. However, that's 10 more wins than they had last year. It's a lot of wins. And a lot of things went poorly last year. There's a lot of things that can go poorly again this year. One thing, though, that I found interesting, I was listening to the Talking Yanks, the John Boy podcast there, and I forget who the co-host's name is, but they were talking about specifically with the Yankees going up against the Red Sox, and they took the over-under on Yankees wins versus the Red Sox. The number was 8.5 out of 13 games. And one thing I thought was super interesting, the guy was like, well, the Yankees don't really care about that. And I was like, huh. Now, I got like a little annoyed when he said it, but I'm like, wait, he's actually probably right. And he looked at the schedule, and there's one game in particular where the Yankees have an off day after playing a game in Boston. And he's like, well, that's a game where Aaron Judge will sit. And I'm like, wow, what world do we live in that Yankee fans are looking at the schedule and already assuming that Aaron Judge, if he's healthy at that point in the season, is going to get an off day because then he can get 2 off days in a row because he sat against Boston. Like, that is not the Yankees that we all grew up with. It's not the Yankees that the Yankee fans want to see and root for every day, but they play this long game that they're going to try to do what they can over 162 to get their best outcome possible. However, it makes it feel like they lose their edge. And clearly, whatever they've been doing when it comes to rest and comes to taking care of their players hasn't been working anyway. They've been one of the more injured franchises that we've seen over the past few seasons. So for that, I'm going to say they're going to win 89 games, 88 games. They're going to probably make the playoffs, but this is not a juggernaut team. They don't have a juggernaut staff. They don't have a juggernaut lineup. Their bullpen will probably be good. Judge and Soto will be good when they play, and Soto will play 150 games. That being said, 93 wins, 92 wins in this division is going to be incredibly difficult, and I don't see them getting there. So there we go. Any notes? Anything to add on the Yankees here, guys, before we move on to the Mets? All right. How about it? Well, what about that last thing, though? The whole idea about, do they care about a rivalry? Do they care about beating the Red Sox? Do you think the Yankees and as an organization, like, even care about that? Because I thought it was interesting that he said that with such confidence and like solitude almost, that I was like, wow, this guy's probably right. Like, the Yankees truly don't care about that rivalry right now. They'll sit everybody as long as it aligns with their rest.
That rivalry is not the same because neither of those teams are the powerhouses that they were the last, decade plus. 2.
Yeah.
And I'd say even the Yankees and the Rays rivalry, which I think had more buzz than the Yankees and the Red Sox rivalry. I think that rivalry is kind of dead. I think the Yankees' biggest quote-unquote rivals, the chippiest games of the bunch, is when they play Toronto. So yeah, I don't think the Yankees and Red Sox rivalry is what it was. I don't know if it will ever be that again.
And frankly,
the biggest
what the
AL
Yankees
East
need to do,
rivalry. It's Blue Jays Orioles now. It's a new age. Just kidding.
It's probably true. It might be true, though, this year, right? It's going to be exciting to see those teams play. But it's just sad because it's like, I get what the Yankees are trying to do. However, look at a team like the New York Knicks right now, dominating teams under 500. That's how they currently sit as the 3 seed, right? Like, the Yankees need to absolutely capitalize on teams they're supposed to beat. And if you're throwing away games and lineups, like, it's like, oh, well, we need to rest. We need to rest. You need to win every freaking game, man. And I know it's not how 162 works. I know it's not how baseball works anymore. But when you're fighting to try to win 90 games, like, that's what you got to do. All right. Let's move on to the New York Mets. I'll go through their stuff really quick. Subway Sports Talk, Pete Kennedy, Pat Boyle, Cody O'Connor. Same thing with the Mets as we just did with the Yankees. Currently, 2024 numbers for the Mets, according to DraftKings, 81.5 at minus 110 odds, plus 1,200 for the division, plus 190 for the playoffs, plus 2,800 to win the NL, and plus 5,500 to win the World Series. Cody, how many of those did you take already?
I have over 80.5 wins. It was just days before JD Martinez signed. And then there was this inkling of hope that they would also sign Jordan Montgomery. There were some reports that they were in on him. And I'm like, man, that number might jump up like 2-3 more wins. So I do have 80.5 and some player props that we'll certainly get to.
Beautiful. All right. So now I'm going to ask you, Cody, to do kind of what Pat did before as we enter this 2024 season here for the New York Mets. Not the big marquee acquisition like Juan Soto in New York for the Yankees. However, there is a renewed energy of sorts with the Mets. No more Buck Showalter in town. A few new pieces here and there. A lot of the same pieces that we're used to. But the Mets do seem to have this more relaxed, energized feel about the ball club. So, Cody, how do you feel going into the season?
Yeah, I think a big part of that, and they say Mendoza is that type of a guy, like a laid back and kind of players type of coach. And so I'm sure he's trying to create that environment. I think a lot of that environment comes from the expectations being different, not having, bona fide Hall of Fame Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander heading your team, coming off 101 wins and, a collapse, if you will. I don't call it a collapse because it's hard to do and win 101 games. But, they ultimately sputtered out, didn't win a playoff series. And they only added going into the previous season. So I think the expectation has changed. 80.5 wins tells you that exactly, or 81.5 now. And because of that, I think you're going to be able to see some of these guys just relax a little bit and hopefully play to their standards. Getting guys back healthy like Edwin Diaz and Starling Marte. Like Edwin Diaz is essentially your big offseason acquisition. What he does for that bullpen, and he looks so far like Edwin Diaz through spring training. I mean, that is a huge, huge addition to a bullpen that they also added other pieces to. So this is a different look Mets team, even though the core, especially in the lineup, is ultimately the same. But with David Stearns coming in, there's going to be a different philosophy. That's why you see a guy like Harrison Bader in center field, because there's going to be a big emphasis on defense. There's going to be a big emphasis on scoring runs and getting to the bullpen, I think, a little earlier than Mets fans are used to seeing. And I think that's what kind of this rotation is made up for. So as much as I was thinking, man, can they just sign Jordan Montgomery? There's going to be a big shift in the outlook. I think that this is just what their course of action is. There seems to be a steady plan. And I'd be remiss if I said I wasn't excited again. I'm excited. I think that they can be an 85 to 89 win team. I think that they can be a playoff team, a wild card team at that. I mean, 12-1 to win the division's pretty hilarious, but it's factual. I mean, the Braves are going to win 105, so just toss that out. But can they be a wild card team? I said it months ago. I think it to this day. I absolutely do believe that, but some things have to go right for them, like they do for every team.
Yeah, and you start thinking about the Mets being a playoff team. You start thinking about who the other wild card teams are. There's still pretty strong expectations revolving the Philadelphia Phillies, the Diamondbacks, obviously off their postseason run last year, making it to the World Series. Like they're looked at as a team who should be back in the postseason. However, it's not like they made it with flying colors last year. They were just an 84 win team. It's not like they were a 92 win wild card team. So there are things that have to break out. The Central's not great. The Cubs might be on a little bit of an uptick. We could let Patty talk about that maybe in a minute. The Brewers, somebody has to win the Central, right? But the Mets, the point is the Mets are in the conversation now for at least a low-end wild card. However, like the Yankees, to be in their division race, the Mets need things to go well for them to be in this wild card race. So what we're going to do, just like we do with the Yankees, talk about the hitters, talk about the pitching and the defense, and then we will break down our predictions for this team. So, Pat, let me start off with you. Let's talk about the offense. I think there were Mets fans who were hoping for some big-time additions to this lineup, big-time additions in the offseason in general. They weren't really there. We've talked about it ad nauseum, why they weren't there, or if they were there, why they didn't go for them. The big thing, the big change here is JD Martinez. A lot of the other names are similar. Harrison Bader is the new one as well. When we sit here today entering 2024, Pat, do you feel a sense of safety or excitement when it comes to the Mets offense?
I do. I feel excitement. I think Cody hit on it. I think the biggest thing is there's not that overbearing expectations of World Series or bust right from the opening day. And Buck, as much as a Hall of Fame manager as I think he is, didn't pull the right strings at all last season. Didn't have the right energy. Didn't have the right tone. You got fresh blood in there with Carlos Mendoza. He seems to be a guy that is going to keep things light, but also, he's a player manager. Also has some good energy about him. I kind of like everything he's said so far. We'll see what kind of strings David Stearns is going to be pulling for this team now that they've got their first free agency in the books. They waited around. They got the price to drop on JD Martinez. I thought just like the Yankees, the Mets should have been in play for Jordan Montgomery, especially after Cody Senga got shut down. Another guy you're hoping comes back in May. I know he's scheduled to start throwing again this week. So far, so good after he got shut down with the shoulder on basically the second day of spring training. You want to get away from that thinking of same old Mets. Day 2 of spring training and Cody Senga got shut down with a shoulder injury. Like how? You were just off for the last 5 months. But so far so good in terms of him ramping things back up. So you hope he's back for May. But I just think with the offense, again, there's not the crippling expectations and crippling pressure of you have to you have to score 6-7 runs every single game. Alonso's in a contract year, right? So I think you can expect a big season out of Pete. I think you can expect basically the same from Francisco Lindor as he has given you the last couple of years, and that he's given you most of his career. The batting average isn't as high as when he was with Cleveland, but he's a guy that is routinely driving in 100 runs now. 2 years in the last 2 years in the Mets, 107 and 98, and a combined 57 bombs. Like his ability to just be super consistently, in that 800 OPS range, plays every single game. You're getting Gold Glove caliber defense. Sure, he strikes out a little bit more than what you'd think, but considering he got over 600 at bats and struck out less than 140 times the last 2 years, yeah, he's going to go through some slumps, but Lindor is super solid. I think a big year's coming out of Pete. The guy I'm most excited about, and I know Cody is, and I texted him, I produced a midday show at the Fan today, and Mark DeRosa was saying he sees a lot of Mike Trout and Francisco Alvarez. How does that not get you fired up? A guy, again, that kind of had a similar season of Volpe. All the expectations coming up. He should have been up there on opening day. He got called up late, and the average was low. He only hit 209, but 25 home runs, 63 bombs, 25 bombs, 63 RBIs in just 123 games. I mean, man, it kind of seems like it'll be a disappointment this year if Alvarez doesn't go for 30 and 100. I think he's got that pop. I think he's got that kind of talent at the plate. He's the guy I'm most excited about. And I think, yeah, where you look at this Mets team as a whole, the rotation looks super sus, looks really mediocre. The team as a whole looks like a 500 ball club. I think you can expect a big bounce back season from this offense. I'm a big fan of Nimmo. I think he's an incredible table setter with his ability to get on base. And, again, just like we have our question marks with, are we going to get bounce back seasons from guys that were hurt or underperformed last year with the Yankees? Are you going to get the same with the Mets? Starling Marte, what's going? Is it going to be like a neck injury all season long with him? He was another guy that kind of just limped through all of last season, played hurt, shouldn't have been playing, underperformed big time. Bader, the same thing. But the addition to J.D. Martinez was huge because now you have protection to Pete Alonso, right? Without that, you can pitch around Pete. You can take your chances with whoever's hitting in the 5-hole, whether it's McNeil, another guy. Is he going to have a bounce back year? You can take your chances with Alvarez on most days. Now you got a guy that is a professional Hall of Fame hitter, in my opinion. You got a guy that is so smart, so disciplined, can really extend at bats, grind down starting pitching. That's what the Mets did when they won 101 games. They grinded down opposing pitching every single game. It felt like the starting pitcher against the Mets was into the 60s in the 60 pitches by the third or fourth inning. So I think that's when you can expect a lot more of this year, especially with JD backing up Alonso. My excitement level for the Mets offense is, I would say, a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, Pat, but I do agree with you. I was listening to Daniel Murphy on a podcast, the SNY Mets, the Mets pod, I believe it's called. He was talking about how he related what he saw in spring training with this Mets team to the 2015 team with the Mets. And he was like, you know what JD coming in reminded me of? It was Michael Kadire. And, the host, recapped it after Daniel left the show. They're like, well, Michael Kadire didn't have good stats, but what he brought to the table was this professionalism, this level of understanding, hitting, ball talk, talking baseball with the guys, bringing up this entire team as a hitting unit. And he's like, JD Martinez brings that and more to the table because he's still producing at a high level, right? Michael Kadire hit like crap for the Mets that year, but Daniel Murphy gave him credit to kind of lifting that team up from a professionalism standpoint. If JD can bring both of those things to the table, wow, that'll be great for them. On top of that, you look at some of the projections for JD Martinez right now and, Fangraphs and Zips and all that stuff. They have him projecting at like a just slightly above average hitter. And what I don't understand about that is last year was probably JD Martinez's best season in the past 4 seasons. So this guy's not coming on a downswing. I know he's getting older here, but he's not coming on a downswing as far as how he's performed most recently. This guy played like a dog last year, 135 OPS plus last year. That's some good stats right there. So when he comes back into the lineup in a couple of weeks, whenever he's ready, you're looking at a lineup now where there's no real big weak points. We talk about the Yankees lineup and we say, all right, we know Soto and Judge are going to be really good. What's going to happen outside of that? Well, now, if you say the same thing, all right, we know Lindor and Alonso are going to be pretty damn good. You got Nimmo, you got JD Martinez, you got Alvarez. if goddamn McNeil can do his even year thing and go off again this year, wow, we're looking at a 1 through 6 that's going to be pretty damn dangerous. And yeah, the starting pitching may be sus, but maybe there's a team that can score a lot of runs this year. So I think that is exciting, and it's not hyperbolic to get hyped up about the Mets offense.
There's a lot of potential for these young guys too, like not just the ones that you're going to see, the Brett Beatties and Vientos I know just got sent down, and we've grouped Alvarez in there, but
Vientos is never going to play another game in a Mets uniform, Cody. I just want to sorry jumping on you there.
No worries. It's
That's
okay.
one thing that I was pissed about, and I yelled about it on the fan for the first 20 minutes of my show. I never thought I'd spend 20 minutes talking about Mark Vientos getting sent down to AAA. I just don't understand. Why not give the kid a crack for 2 weeks until Martinez is ready to go here? That made no sense to me. Instead, fucking Zach Short with a career batting average of 174 gets an opening day roster spot because he can play a couple different positions. Give me a break.
Neither here nor there. No, I mean, look, Mark Vientos, he didn't hit in the spring at all. He had all his cracks last year too, and he's just not produced. And yes, he's got some pop, he's got some power, but Brett Beatty was the one that really stuck out in the spring this year. And so I've always liked Brett Beatty, another guy that I feel like I've just held on to some stock. And, you know, he had a really good finish to the spring. You hope he can carry that into the season. But I'm talking about the other guys. Like, you're going to see Jet Williams, I think, at some point this year. You're going to see Luis Angel Acuna at some point this year. You may even see Drew Gilbert at some point this year. Those are guys. Jet Williams was always in the Mets system. Luis Angel Acuna came over with the Scherzer deal, and Drew Gilbert and Ryan Clifford came over with the Verlander deal. And some of these guys, they're very close. They're ready to break out. They started the spring with the Mets. Unfortunately, Ronnie Mauricio getting injured in the Winter League was just a dagger, because he really looked like he had something. He looked like he had some promise to him. Big, lengthy guy, ton of power, could play all spots, steals bases like he's Ellie De La Cruz or O'Neal Cruz. Like, he kind of had that look, that makeup. I'm not saying he's those guys, but he had the look of them. So that really stunk, finding that out in the winter. It got followed up with Cody O'Connor, like you said, but that's a potential blessing in disguise that it happened that early. All the reports since have been positive. So, you just got to stitch it together until then. You can't win the division in April and May, but you can lose it. So the Mets typically don't do that until June. So maybe it's a good thing that you'll have them before then and you get them healthy and ramping up by then. So, there is the reason for optimism. It's always cautious when it comes to the Mets, but there is still some.
Yeah, well, the optimism with the offense, I think, is fair. Like, this team or I should say this franchise has been built on pitching for so long that I feel like it's almost unnatural for Mets fans to sit here and talk positively about the offense. But, like, the past 2 years, the offense has been really good. Last year, the offense was good, right? Like, their issue wasn't offense last year. They could score a little bit, right? So I think it's fair to say that. But with that being said, there are still some question marks. We mentioned some of those names already. Outside of the Alonsos and the Lindors and the Nimmo, let's take out Nimmo, Lindor, Alonso, and JD Martinez, as Martinez is like that vet who you kind of expect something from, right? Outside of those four guys, is there an unsung hero waiting in the rafters here for this Mets offense? Pat, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I said Francisco Alvarez.
Wait. Take him out too, because he's too easy. He's too much of an easy answer, Alvarez. So not him either.
I hope it's Beatty. I hope it's Brett Beatty, right? As a guy that kind of wanted to see some more natural competition between him and Mark Vientos, I hope Brett Beatty, steps up and has a huge year here and, has an OPS that's not in the 500s, right? And then I hope that he can play solid enough defense to where he's not taking that to the plate with him a lot. Because when Alec Boehm, before he became a household name for the Phillies, that was a big thing for him. He was always taking his poor play at third base to the plate with him. So I hope that's not a concern for Beatty this year. I hope Brett Beatty can be an unsung hero for them, and I hope he rakes, because we've seen it, right? Exit velo consistently over 95 miles an hour, right? He's got so much pop off the bat. He can hit to the opposite field. A gap to gap, great hitter. Hopefully he puts it together. He's got an excellent frame, and he's got he's a guy that can project to be a 280 hitter with 25 and 100. Maybe he even has a little bit more power than that. Maybe I'm selling him short. So I hope it's Beatty. I just hope, and I'll let Cody and you give your answers as well. I just want to throw this in here now before we transition to the pitching to make a note of this for the next 5 minutes. I hope that, sure, the expectations of winning a World Series this year isn't there. I just hope that the expectations of we have to score 6 runs a game because the pitching is on paper very mediocre, I hope that doesn't stunt this offense this year for the Mets. But I'll let Cody and you give you guys an answer on who you think an unsung hero will be.
I don't know if it's an unsung hero, but I think the at minimum X factors of this lineup is it's both Jeff McNeil and Starling Marte. Like what this lineup looks like with at least one of them, but we saw 2 years ago with both of them clicking. And I think I'm more I feel more confident that Jeff McNeil bounces back. And his bounce back looks like hitting 300. I mean, that's what Jeff McNeil can do. It's not crazy or hyperbolic to say that Jeff McNeil absolutely can and almost should hit 290 to 300 and drive in some runs in big spots and be a nightmare for pitchers to throw to. But if Starling Marte's healthy, I'm not talking stealing bases healthy, but is he good enough to be able to hit 260 to 270? He's a career 290 plus hitter too. I mean, Starling Marte for his career has been a guy who's always been able to produce, and he up at the top of the lineup. Again, it just lengthens it so much. So those two are my big X factors. I know you took out Francisco Alvarez, but that's my guy. He's hitting 30
just too
plus.
Easy.
He is going to be a star in this league. Like I'm going out, I don't usually do that, but this guy is the one that I'm willing to really stake my claim in. Like he's the one who I want to talk about the most because he's the guy that I just see the absolute most in. And I just believe in who he's going to become. So I'll stop there for that. But that's the guy for me that I'm really watching closely. But McNeil and Marte are 100% going to change this lineup.
And maybe it was bad podcasting by me because Alvarez is the most interesting to talk about. I just felt like it was too easy, right? Because if you're going to talk about the the guys who haven't been there for multiple years already, it's the easiest answer to say Alvarez, right? He's the most simple one. However, you're right, Cody, to bring him up because he's the most exciting one to bring up as well. So I probably should have left him in if I'm being fair, but that's okay. I think Marte, though, as well, I think the reports on him have been great in this spring that he is healthy and he's moving well. Like you can just see him not moving right last year. It looked like he was laboring out in the outfield. His defense took a hit. His offense took a hit. It was all bad for Starling Marte last year. He's supposed to be healthy right now. And you're right, Cody. Why not expect him to play well? And I know we're not talking about Lindor either right now. Lindor's 30. I think Met fans sometimes and New York baseball fans sometimes try to act like Francisco Lindor is already 36 at the end of this contract. My guy's 30 years old. He's very much a primed baseball player right now. And if he were to come out and hit 30 home runs again this year, no one should be shocked. If he were to come out and have the best season of his career this year, no one should be shocked. Some people try to act like his best days are absolutely so far behind him in the past, and I just don't feel that way. I've been pro Lindor since he got to New York. A lot of Mets fans were expecting to get Alex Rodriguez from 2004. Like, I don't understand what Mets fans wanted from this guy. He plays 150 games. He's a Gold Glove shortstop, and he's been a top 3 offensive shortstop in baseball. So what more do you want? I don't know. But guess what? I think you could get more this year. I think you might get the best Lindor Mets season of his career so far. I think that's very, very possible. But with all that positivity, it's time to talk about the pitching staff, which is not as positive, not as fun, not as exciting. So as we sit here today, the lineup or the rotation does not include Kodai Senga, but hopefully he'll be back soon. Reports, like they said, are positive. But right now, Jose Quintana, Luis Severino, Tyler McGill, Sean Manaea, and Adrian Hauser is the 5 as of right now. You do get the big benefit of Edwin Diaz returning to this bullpen, the return of Brooks Raley, who was a stud last year, Adam Ottavino, Jake Diekman, Drew Smith is back, Sean Reed-Foley, amongst some other names there as well. Let's start with the starting rotation, Pat. We both mentioned it being sus, and that might be an understatement. Is there any silver linings, or are you sticking with the sus of the Mets pitching staff?
No, it's sus for me, man, and that makes it kind of even more frustrating. And I get after a year where you blow through, hundreds of millions of dollars on Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander just to trade them when it all goes up in smoke. Even Steve Cohen and all his billions, you can't necessarily think, all right, well, Steve's just going to spend again. And I know Joe Beningo every Saturday, I think for the last 4 months, gets on, and I love Joe, but it's, bro, I'm telling you, he brought David Stearns in here to run this like a small market ball club, bro. So it's true in the sense of you could have signed Jordan Montgomery, you could have signed Blake Snell, right? Especially you see the prices they went for. And I know, right, like you can't build a $500 million payroll when every guy that the Mets signed from here on out is going to cost them more than double. I understand that. But especially after the Senga injury, there should have been a pivot, not to Tyler McGill and not to saying, oh, well, when David Peterson comes back from his hip injury, we hope that David Peterson can go out there and give us 5 innings whenever he gets into the rotation, whenever we need him to make a start. So it just, like, at best, this is a rotation with full of guys that are 4s and 5s in a rotation. So even if you get, even if you get the season that the guys have pitched to on their baseball card from Quintana, Severino, Minaya, Hauser, McGill, even if all 5 of those guys are healthy and pitch to what you think they're going to pitch, like, it's not a good rotation. It just isn't. And in the NL East too, we talk about division. I know they're not playing all these teams 18 times a year anymore, but still, they're going to play the Phillies, they're going to play the Braves, who are absolutely going to rake, and they're going to crush the ball. So there's going to be a lot of pressure again on this Mets bullpen just because you got Edwin Diaz back. Like, you need to have a lead, right, going into the 9th inning for Edwin Diaz to be effective, right? I mean, if you're behind 55-60% of the games you play, that's not a good equation, and you're putting unnecessary stress on this bullpen. And again, you're hoping that Senga is back by May here. So, again, it's going to take a career year from Quintana and or Sean Manaea or Adrian Hauser for this Mets rotation to really make you say, wow, this is actually pretty good. And again, Luis Severino, ultimate wild card, right? A guy that couldn't get my dead grandma out at the plate last year. We know this stuff that he's capable of. Can he do it? Right? So there's too many question marks for me to think that this Mets rotation is good enough to make them a playoff team.
Pat, when they say rest in peace, your poor grandmother has caught more stray bullets in that grave. I mean, every other broadcast, that woman's like, geez, can I just get a minute? It is loaded with 4s and 5s. That's exactly what this rotation is, and it's why it was frustrating that they didn't go and get Jordan Montgomery when they had all the time in the world. I understood them not signing Blake Snell. I actually didn't really want the guy, but I thought Jordan Montgomery would be reasonable and lengthen that lineup, that rotation. I'm curious what they do with a guy like a Joey Lucchesi this year. Like, is he a Trevor Williams type from a couple years ago? Could he be a long bullpen guy or one of those in-between guys? Jose Buto still has like some decent stuff, like a little bit of promise there. Like, could he fill in if one of these guys really sucks? Like, no one's going to be surprised if McGill or Hauser is just awful. And it's like, yeah, he's unpitchable every 5th day. Like, is there a guy there to step up? They have some young guys in the system, like a Mike Vassell or a Dom Hamill, but they're not there just yet. The new guy I keep hearing about is Christian Scott, who I saw a little bit of. Big, tall guy, has pretty nasty stuff. He very quickly has climbed up the ranks, so quick that I think it's not crazy to think you might see him. I'm not saying he's a savior, but is there another option? Do you have enough depth? Because we know one thing, somebody is going to go down. I mean, you can guarantee that at least one pitcher, you hope it's not more than one at a time. And with Kodai Senga already being down, it emphasizes the pressure that these guys need to be healthy. And, Luis Severino is a big health bet. Jose Quintana is coming off injury last year. He's 36 years old. Like, he's a health bet. So they obviously have to be healthy. So, like, that's where the ifs really come in. And even the optimistic Mets fan has to be concerned that this rotation could actually just really be too bad for the offense or bullpen to overcome.
If I told you, and I'm going to take Senga out because he's hurt right now. If I told you none of these current 5 rotation members had a sub-4 ERA, would you guys be shocked?
No, I would think maybe Jose Quintana does.
Yeah. So, but like, so maybe he does, maybe Severino does, maybe Shelmanai does. Like, that's what it is. It's maybe, maybe, maybe. And I think with Mets fans right now too, they're banking heavily on a Severino bounce back, which is very much possible, right? Like, we've seen him be good since the injury. We've seen him do good things. We've also seen bad things. We've seen injuries. We've seen it go poorly. So if you're banking on Severino to be a top of the rotation guy, it's ugly. The only thing that is a benefit right now is the bullpen was a pretty big weakness last year with the displacement of Edwin Diaz. You know, him being out and everyone getting bumped up to a different spot right there. Their bullpen was trash last year. Outside of Brooks Raley and Adam Montevito, it was trash, trash, trash. This year, the bullpen could and should be better. Can that take some of the pressure off the rotation? Yeah, but like Pat said, if the rotation is so poor, it's going to extend the bullpen to a point where it's all going to come back crashing down on the Mets pitching staff anyway. So what's the real big difference here? Whatever they added in bullpen, they lost in starting rotation. So they are going to need some hopes and prayers here. It's not to say that none of them can come true, right? We can see Quintana have a good year. We can see McGill be decent. We can see Luis Severino be that guy. Maybe Hauser will surprise people, but it's all question mark, question mark, question mark, question mark, which is why even with the excitement we have about this Mets season here in 2024, their number's still 81 and a half. Their number is still a 500 baseball team. They're not a 91 and a half like the Yankees, even though we all took the under on the Yankees here, and we might very well take the over on the Mets here. That doesn't mean that they're going to go ahead and mess around and win 98 games. That's not what's happening here, right? Their path to success is being a great offensive team, a frisky pitching team, and a good defensive team, getting themselves into a wild card and seeing what happens. Because that stuff happens here in the MLB. But to just trust that these pitchers are going to step up and say, oh, they're due for a bounce back. Oh, he's about time to make his stance back in the MLB as a great pitcher again. Like, okay, well, let's talk in May. Let's talk in July, because that's where we're at. This rotation has only question marks, and some of them might be good answers. Some of them might be bad.
Can I just bring up one more thing real quick? But Jordan Montgomery, I keep talking about it, but the thing I keep forgetting to mention is not only does he not go to the Mets, but he goes to Arizona, a team you're very much expecting to be fighting for a wild card spot with. At least you're hoping you are. The other guy I really liked, Jorge Soler, Blake Snell. The San Francisco Giants really loaded up. Like, they're another team that are going to be right there. So it's not just that the Mets didn't add some of these pieces. It's where they went that are going to be, teams that you're going to see towards the end, hopefully.
Yeah. How much does Diaz, or how good does Diaz look this year? I'll say that, Pat. Do you think Diaz has that command that he had 2 years ago?
I think it's tough to think that he is going to have a, like Cy Young caliber season, not just relief pitcher of the year, Cy Young MVP caliber season that he had in 2022 when the Trumpets took the world by storm. I think it's probably closer to the 2021 season that he had, where he had a 3.5 ERA. Right, there's probably going to be some stretches where he's not untouchable, where he blows a couple saves, where the walk rate is a little bit higher than you want it to be, and the command kind of evades him, and he's not striking out, basically 16 guys per 9 innings. It's probably a little bit closer to 12 or 13. Look, I would love to be wrong. I would love Diaz to come back off of the torn patella and just be untouchable again. I think that's a little bit unfair. So, and that's another thing that I don't. I don't necessarily say, yeah, the Mets can absolutely make the playoffs this year, because it's going to be automatic, just not, 99 times out of 100 like it was in 2022 for Sugar. So there's a little bit of concern. There's a little bit of, skirmishness for me when I look at Edwin Diaz, the times that the Mets rotation does pitch well, thinking that you have a W in the book. I don't think it's that automatic.
I completely agree with you, Pat. Like, it's funny, we talk about Lindor and the expectations that Mets fans have for him, and like him doing going for a 30 for 30 season last year is still not enough. Him playing 160 is still not enough. And it's like, hey, like, Mets fans, we need to temper our expectations. It's very difficult to come off injury and be the same guy. And you're talking about the same guy who threw to, a 1 ER. I mean, you named it all, Pat. He was completely shut down, lights out. No one could touch him. Get to the 9th inning. You've won a game. You can't expect that. There's going to be some rust, probably some early ones. It's funny that I say that now, but then I'll be, throwing my remote at my television in May when he blows a game. But it is what you have to remember and expect coming into it. It's not going to be a 1.0 ERA. It's just, if he does, unbelievable, but you can't expect that.
Yeah. All right. Let's do it. Prediction time for the New York Mets. 81.5 on the over-under, 1,200 on the division, 190 for playoffs, 2,800, and L winner, 5,500 for the World Series. Let's go with the over-under, 81.5. Cody, why don't you kick us off?
Cody, your team.
I've already taken it at 80.5. Hopefully the one win doesn't change too much. Over.
Yeah, like it. Patty B.
Yeah, I'll go over just because I'm really bullish on this offense, but not by much. I think they were going to be 83 or 84 and probably miss out on a wild card by 3 or 4 games at the end of the year. And you're going to come back and say, well, man, maybe if they added Jordan Montgomery, or maybe if they, again, too, a lot of this depends on what Stearns does at the deadline. I don't think they're going to be looking away don't think they'll be looking to give away a lot of prospects at the deadline. And I can already foresee at the end of July, early August, where Mets fans are screaming and clamoring for them to buy, and David Stearns kind of just stands pat, doesn't really do a whole lot. Maybe trades Jeff McNeil. Maybe sends Jeff McNeil packing at the trade deadline. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. Just because you can get a little bit back and they continue to retool that farm system. I really do think that if you put a gun to David Stearns' head and said, "Do you want to make the playoffs this year?" I don't think he's going to say yes. I think they're playing the long game. I think they're playing for next year and beyond. So I'll go over just because I kind of wanted to get you guys to have some excitement this year into August and early September. But I'll go over. Also, would not surprise me if the Mets win 76, 77 games.
Last year, they won 75 in a pretty abysmal season with no energy, no juice, and no hope. I think 82 in this season with some energy and a little inkling of hope is feasible. It's a slight over, and I still feel, it's weird. You put the Mets and Yankees next to each other. We all took the under on the Yankees and expect them to make the playoffs. We all took the over on the Mets and kind of don't expect them to make the playoffs. I think that they're fighting. I think they're playing meaningful baseball. I will bet them plus 190 to make the playoffs just because I am a Mets fan and I want that to happen. But it's not something that I'm putting my name on as well. Just because this NL is not trash like many people try to make it seem. Obviously, the NL East is really good. And the NL West is going to be really good too. The Padres, just as we sit here talking about all the Mets positives, Padres fans are thinking that they're going to make a bounce back season as well. So the Mets' better season in 24 versus 23 could exist. It doesn't mean they're making the playoffs. But yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting year, at least to a certain extent. And it will be fun to see some of those prospects that Cody mentioned. And maybe, as Daniel Murphy mentioned on that SNY podcast, if they're sprinting to the deadline and they're in the race, maybe they make that move. But I think Pat's probably right. It's going to piss off a lot of Mets fans. But we got to think back to what we really want here as Mets fans, sustained success. And right now, the farm system is better today than it was a couple of years ago, and they're looking to keep building that damn thing. That's not a bad thing either. So I'm taking the over, but it's a cautious, slightly pessimistic over on the 82-83 win Mets for 2024. All right, gentlemen. Great MLB. Well, I shouldn't say MLB. Great Mets and Yankees preview here. Any last words? Any other props you want to get off your chest? Any other things you want to say about baseball starting up?
I give you three quick ones. They're all Mets related, of course. Pete Alonso over 41.5 home runs. Contract year, dude had an off year last year. He hit 45. I just think the number's low. And, like we said, he's fighting for a contract. 50 plus wouldn't surprise me. Francisco Alvarez, this is my bet, not only of the year of my lifetime. This is the largest wager I've put up. 11 units, over 21.5 home runs. It went over, I think it's up to 22.5. I've seen it at 23.5. I took it at 21.5. The minute I saw it come out, And I even sprinkled him 30 plus at plus 230. So those are my Mets bets along with over 80.5 wins. LGM, boys.
I jumped on that Francisco Alvarez over with you, Cody. As soon as you sent it in the chat, I did not put 11 units on it, but I did put like three units on it, maybe.
Maybe it's the same number.
Something like that.
That could be the same amount.
No, it's not. It definitely isn't. Pat, anything from you?
No,
Nada.
no, I'm good.
All right.
I'm good. No, you guys know I'm not a big futures bets guys. I need the immediate satisfaction of either winning or losing a bet. So, for better or worse.
All right, Patrick, enjoy Citi Field on Friday for all of us. To both of you guys, big time thank you as always. Special shout out to Patty B because of our lovely shift together at the Fan on Sunday. That was awesome. First time that we've actually worked together at the Fan, Pat. That was freaking sweet. I enjoyed every second of it.
Dude, it was phenomenal, and hopefully there's more of that to come in the future, and hopefully I'm producing a weekend shift soon, and Pete Kennedy is lighting up the airwaves. So I would love to be on the opposite side.
Ooh. Oh my God. Let's put that into the ether. Let's put it out there. All right. Well, anyways, thank you to the two of you. I hope everyone could put up with my nasally ass self. I'm fighting through Dayquils and hot toddies right now. I'm trying to get right for opening day. That's all we got. Subway Sports Talk. Appreciate y'all for listening. Mets and Yankees preview in the books. It's baseball season. More hoops talk coming next week and March Madness as well. Talk to you soon. Cheers.